Okay, in order to get your Essentials workspace reset each time, you can go to Window, you can choose Workspace, you can always come down and choose Reset Essentials, and that will reset your workspace to match whatever the class workspace happens to be. Today we're going to go to File, we're going to choose Open. From Open, you're going to go to your Network folder. In your Network folder, we're going to look under Graphics, Photoshop, and we're going to double click on To Hawaii. Once you're in there, you're going to click on, we're going to do a single click on 04 Start. Then we're going to hold down our Control key, and we're going to also open up Beach PSD. So we've got two documents we're opening up, 04 Start and Beach PSD. Okay, whenever we look at our documents, right now we see two images. We have a background image that we have open, and we also have our Start 04. So if you look at the top of the screen right below your options bar, you can click back on either tab to go to either picture. Okay, we're going to start with our pineapple picture. We know that it is selected because this up here in the tab is highlighted, and we can see the layers that go with that image. Before we begin, we want to save this in our network folder under a specific name so that if Photoshop or something else happens to crash, we can go back and fix it. Okay, we're going to go to File, Save As. This is the first time you're saving it and you're putting it in a new location. You cannot save it into the iDrive because that's a read-only folder. So we're going to go to our H drive. You're going to find your Photoshop folder. We're going to rename this. To rename the whole thing, you're going to type your name. I'm going to put a class period in here. And then I'm going to do underscore, and I'm going to type Hawaii.psd. There's no need for you to put a class period. It's just so I can keep it organized with all my classes. From here, remember it's a PSD because we're saving it in multiple layers, so we press Save. Okay, just as a review, anytime that we're going to save it as a new name or new location, we can either go to File, Save As, or remember your keyboard shortcut is Shift, Control, and S. From here on out, all we'll have to do is do a Control S in order to save it in the same spot with the same name. Okay, we want to make sure that you can see the Layers panel. Remember, if you can't see your Layers panel, we're going to go to Window and choose Layers. But in this case, you can see your Layers panel. You'll notice that there are 5 layers available in your document. However, we can only see 2 of them right now. Okay, you're going to see 2 icons that are really important right now. The first icon is a lock symbol. It's on the background layer. The lock symbol means that that layer is protected. So in your notes, draw a little lock, and next to it put the word protected. Okay, we also see an eyeball next to the pineapple in the background layer. An eyeball represents visibility. If the eyeball is there, we can see the content of that layer. If we click on it again and remove the eyeball, the layer disappears. So in your notes, draw an eyeball, and next to it write the word visibility. Okay, the next step in our document is to go and click on the beach document for right now. So at the top of your screen, you're going to click on the beach tab. You'll notice that in the beach document there's only one layer, and it's not a background layer, it's actually a photo layer, and it's not locked. So we want to rename our layer documents, our layers, to be more representative of what the layer is. To rename a layer, you're going to double click on the word Layer 1, and we're going to type in a description. In this description, I'm going to type in beach. I press enter, and now it is saved. We just renamed our layer beach, and now we want to go back and adjust some things in our pineapple document. So we're going to click back on the pineapple tab, and remember that your background layer is locked because it came that way as a background layer. We want to unlock it. One way that we can lock it, and the easiest way that I recommend, is just double clicking on the word background. I'm going to simply rename it background. But now when I press OK, the lock is removed and I can change this background up a little bit. Another way to do this is to double click on the background layer and choose layer and then new layer from background. To me, that's a whole lot more steps than what we need. So we just renamed and unlocked our background, And now we want to combine two documents. In order to combine two documents, the easiest way is to be able to see both documents at one time. In order to do this, we want to go to Window, Arrange, then we're going to slide over and choose To Up Vertical. When you do that, now you can see both images side by side, and it's pretty easy to look at. Now that you can see both layers or both documents side by side, the way that we can tell which document you're on is the tab will be highlighted. So I want everybody to click on your beach document that we just renamed our beach layer. We're going to use our Move tool. You're going to put your cursor inside your beach document, actually on the canvas. With your Move tool, we're going to hold it down and drag it over to the pineapple. When you click on the pineapple, now you're going to see the beach layer is right above your background. So whenever we dragged our beach over to our pineapple, we no longer need our beach document, so we're going to click on the beach document, and right up here next to the word beach in that same tab, we're going to press the X. It may ask us, do you want to save it? We're going to say no because we don't need to keep the changes. Now looking back at our pineapple, you should see that the beach layer appears above the background. And you can click on your Move tool and you can click anywhere on that layer and move the beach. We're not going to worry about it right now. You'll also note that the reason it was above beach is because we had the background layer selected before we moved it over. A test question will say something like this. When you insert a new layer, whether it's text or putting a picture there, it will always appear above the layer that you have currently selected. So any new layer is going to appear above the one that you currently had selected. The next thing that we want to do is we want to be able to see only the beach image. And in the past, I would tell you to simply click on the eyeballs and turn off the layers you don't want to see. Right now, you only have 6 layers. It's not that big of a deal. It wouldn't be very difficult to come up here and click on a few eyeballs. If you had 25 layers, that might be a little bit tiresome. So what we're going to do is a new technique. You're going to hold your Alt key on your keyboard, press the eyeball next to the beach. It turns off all the layers except for whatever you just clicked on. To be able to see the layers again, you just simply do the same step. Eyeball and Alt. It turns on the ones that you had before. On your computer, I want you to Alt, press on the eyeball on beach so that I can only see your beach layer. So when we see just the beach picture, you notice that surrounding the beach is a little checkerboard of gray and white pixels. That represents that everything around your picture is clear. Okay, with your Move tool, you're just going to reposition your beach picture in the middle so that we can kind of see all 4 edges with a little space around it. Now we want to create a border around the picture. The easiest way to create a border is to create a stroke. In your notes, you want to write down stroke equals an outline. I'm going to show you 2 different techniques to get a stroke. You can choose whichever one is your favorite. You will need to know both of them for a test. One way is to go to Layer, Layer Style, choose Stroke. The second way, which is the way I do because it's real quick, click on the FX at the bottom of your Layers panel and go up and choose Stroke. Either way will get you the same dialog box on your screen. Now from here we've got to make some changes. You want to change your stroke size to 5. If your stroke goes on the outside of something, the corners and the edges will be rounded. We want our corners to be very sharp and tight, so we're going to choose inside. Our blending mode is going to stay normal. Our opacity is going to stay to 100%. We do want to change our color, so everybody's going to click on the same color picker right here. You notice that right now my color is black. When we talk about colors in here, I usually try to give you a specific color so that if you're colorblind or you have difficulty, everybody will be on the same page. If I give you an RGB number, RGB means red, green, and blue. The higher number, when I give you RGB, will be an indication of what color that is. For example, if it was 255, 0, and 0, I would know that it was almost a solid red. If it was 0, 255, 0, it's going to be a solid green color. If it's 0, 0, 255, I know that it's an intense blue color. If everything is 0 here, and this down here is called my hex number, if all 6 of those are zeros there, I know that I have a perfect shade of true black. In the other instance, I want to make a true white. So I'm going to move my color picker up to the top left corner, and when I click, I have to make sure. Right now it looks like that's white, but I know it's not because my numbers are not the same. So I'm going to drag it over just a little bit more. When my numbers are RGB numbers are all 255 and my hex number is all F's, I know that I have a perfect shade of white. So in your notes, you want to write down that RGB equals 0 means it's black, RGB equals 255 is white. If the hex number is solid zeros, it's black. If the hex number is solid F's, it's white. So you want to make sure you have a pure white color. We're going to press OK to exit out of our color picker, and then press OK again to exit out of your styles dialog box. The reason that we teach students to look at RGB numbers and hex numbers is so that if we're all working on a document that maybe goes for the school, and the school wants us to use the exact shade of purple for everything, if we all have a consistent number to refer back to, all of our purples are going to match. If you don't, probably we would have a different purple for almost everybody in here depending on your interpretation of that color. Okay, now we want to talk about rearranging our layers. And if you look right now, I only see the beach layer, but I want to turn on some other layers. So I'm going to turn on the postage, the Hawaii, flower, pineapple, and background layer. So every layer is selected. In your notes, I want you to write down the word stacking order. That's a vocabulary term that we talk about, stacking order. The definition, a real quick definition for stacking order, is how the layers are arranged. If you're working with clip art in Word, you're probably familiar with when you right click and choose send to forward, bring to back, those kind of options. In this case, we can simply drag the layers to rearrange them to make our image appear different. We're going to click on our beach layer in our layers panel, and we're going to drag it. You'll notice that as you start to drag, you get a cute little fist. And we're going to let go. It's going to place the beach in between the flower and the pineapple. The next thing that we're going to discuss is opacity. Opacity is O-P-A-C-I-T-Y. And you probably are familiar with a term that is similar to opacity, and that term is opaque. If something is opaque, that means we can't see through it. It's kind of opposite of transparent. If something has 100% opacity, we cannot see through it. If it has 0% opacity, it's clear. We look at our opacity for each layer separately. We're going to click on our postage layer. Right now our postage layer has 100% opacity, and to find that you're going to look in the upper right corner of your layers panel. I want to drop my opacity down. There's several ways I can do it. I can click right here on the little arrow and drag the slider. I can type in a number, or I can put my cursor on top of the word opacity and slide it over to the left or to the right. I want to make my opacity for the postage stamp at about 25. Sometimes it's difficult to get the slider exactly where you want it, so if that's the case, you're going to type in 25%. Thing that we want to do is we want to save this again just in case your computer were to freeze or mess up. So because we've already named it and we know it's in the right location, all I have to do is simply hold down Control and press S, and I save it once again. The next thing that we want to talk about for your notes, I want you to write down blending modes. A blending mode is how it affects how colors are seen from one layer to the next, or how two layers interact with each other. So you're going to write that in your notes. When we work with blending modes, the first thing you need to know is that the default blending mode is normal. That is a test question. It'll say what is the default blending mode, and you're going to choose normal. Our blending modes are always done by layers, and they're at the top of the layers panel. In order for you to have a blending mode, you have to have more than one layer. So to work on this, we want to turn off Hawaii, flower, and beach. Right now I just want postage, pineapple, and background to be selected. Okay, and what we need to do is we want to create a second pineapple. There are 3 different ways to duplicate a layer, and I'm going to have you guys change by row and do it. The first way to duplicate a layer is to press on the pineapple. I want my front 2 rows to do this. You're going to press on the pineapple, you're going to press the Control key on your keyboard and the letter J. Control J is one way to create a duplicate layer. The second 2 rows, you guys are going to drag your layer. So we're going to click on pineapple. We're going to drag it down to the new button next to the trash can on your layers panel. When you drag it down and release, you get a pineapple copy. The third way that I want my last row to do is we're on pineapple. We're going to right click in our layer, and I'm going to go all the way up to where it says duplicate layer. You'll notice that all 3 steps that any of you guys took result in the same thing. It's a pineapple copy. So we've just made a copy of our pineapple. You'll notice again that when you made your copy of your pineapple, it went above the layer that you were on, because anytime we create a new layer, it always appears above the original. That's a test question. Again, make sure you have that somewhere in your notes. Now we're going to click on the pineapple copy because we want our blending mode to affect whatever's with the 2 pineapples. In this case, we're going to come up to our blending mode at the top that says normal. We're going to click on it and we're going to change it to overlay. Overlay is about in the middle of the blending mode options. When you press it, it's going to cause your pineapple to look a little bit more vivid. Sometimes when we do this, you don't really realize that it's changed very much, but if we turn the eyeball off and on of our first layer, you're going to see the change. Okay?
What do we do again?
Once we've done the blending mode to the top pineapple, now we want to go up and click on our postage stamp. Our postage stamp looks a little bit too faded out from our opacity change, so I'm going to create a blending mode for it. When you're on postage, we're going to click down on our blending modes. Remember, normal is your default, and this time we're going to change it to multiply. Okay, now it's time to make some changes to the beach. So we want to turn the visibility onto the beach layer. You'll notice it has a white outline around it because we created the stroke in the earlier steps. We want to resize and rotate the beach. So to do that, we're going to go into our Edit Free Transform or Control T. Whoops, you have to make sure you're on the beach first. Okay, so we select our beach layer and we press Control T. Okay, so you just pressed Control T to enter free transform mode. We want to look at some options on the options bar. The first thing we notice is that the X and the Y coordinates represent where our picture is on the screen. We're not going to worry about that right now. The next 2 things we look at are the width and the height. Right now it's 100%. I'm going to hold down my Shift key to keep my proportions on my picture, and as I drag the handle inward, I notice that my percentage on my height and my width change. You're going to continue dragging it down till you get roughly 50%. The next thing that we want to do is we're going to look, this tells us the angles in degrees, and I'm going to type in 15-degree angle so that it's tilted 15 degrees. Next, I'm going to use my Move tool, and I'm going to position the beach picture so that the top corner point is right below the number 12 in my postage stamp. Then I'm going to press Enter to commit my change. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is create a filter to make this picture a little bit more interesting. Before you do that, you're going to turn on the visibility to your flower, your Hawaii, and you should see your postage stamp up there. Now we want to make our next layer appear above the background, so we click on Background, and we're going to press the New button at the bottom of the Layers panel. Now you have Layer 1. We're going to double click on the name Layer 1, and we're going to type in Clouds. Press Enter after we've named it, and now we need to change some colors. We're going to go to our Tools panel. We're double clicking on our foreground color, and I'm going to give you the RGB numbers to get the same blue that we're on. R is 48. G is 138, and blue, or B, is 174. Okay, so we're going to press OK. Now I have blue for my foreground and white is my background. I'm going to select Filter from the menu at the top, down to Render, and over to Clouds. When you do that, you're going to see that Photoshop created some nice clouds in the background. Remember that you can hold down your Alt key and click on the eyeball for clouds, and it takes off all the other layers. Alt, eyeball again, brings them back. Okay, next we want to learn how to add another file in a different way. So we're going to minimize Photoshop. We're going to go back into our network folder. So we're going to go to the computer icon, go to the iDrive. I've kind of snuck ahead of you. We're going to click on the 2_Hawaii, and we want to shrink our screen down so that we can still see area behind it. Now we're going to go back and open Photoshop again. Go down to your toolbar, click on the folder. We're going to click on Flower 2. It's going to be a single click, and we're going to drag it over into our Photoshop document. By doing this, it's going to place it in as a smart object that we can go fix later. You'll notice that there's a different kind of bounding box. This time you see an X in the middle of the bounding box. We want to drag our flower into the lower left corner of, I usually try to put it about where the crosshairs are on the H. Okay, so we positioned it on the H. The next thing we want to do is we want to commit the bounding box, so we're going to press Enter. Okay, I want to be able to see the flower above the pineapple copy, so I'm going to click on it in the Layers panel and drag it up above pineapple. Now we're going to add some text, but before we do that, we want to make sure that we deselect all layers. There's not a keyboard command to do this, so we're going to choose Select, Deselect Layers. You'll notice that when you do this, none of the layers are selected on the right-hand side of your screen. Next, we're going to choose our text tool. We're going to come over here and you want to click on the character panel, and we're going to use the following settings. Times New Roman, choose regular, 36 point. We're going to leave our leading at auto, our kerning at metrics. We're going to start with our tracking at 250. Next, we're going to leave our vertical and horizontal scale the same, leave our baseline shift the same. We are going to change the color of the text. So we're going to double click on the text color palette. Okay, now we're going to choose, I'm going to give you the RGB numbers. R is 57, G 181, B is going to be 74. Okay, we know that by looking at our RGB numbers, the highest number is in the G category, so it's going to be a green color. We're going to press OK. We want to make sure that bold is selected, the faux bold, which is the first one. Then we're going to choose the capital T's. That stands for all caps. You're going to go down here to your anti-alias setting. It's probably going to say sharp or strong by your default. We want to change this to crisp. We're going to come down right below the H in Hawaii, and we're going to press and we're going to type Island Paradise. Now you're going to notice that when we do that, it goes off the page because we had set our tracking to 250. Okay, so we can make some minor adjustments by adjusting our tracking. We're going to slide our tracker over to about -90. You could go a little bit further over, anywhere probably between -90 and -110. And we want Island Paradise to fit nicely below Hawaii. So we're going to click our Move tool, maybe reposition it if we need to, and we're going to commit the text, or click off of it to commit the text. Okay, next we want to apply a gradient to a layer. So you want to select your Hawaii layer. we're going to hold down our Control key and click on the thumbnail for Hawaii. And when you hold down Control and you click on a thumbnail, it selects all of the non-transparent pixels in that layer. It's a really quick, easy way to select everything that's in a particular layer. From here, I am going to go to my Tools panel. I'm looking for the Gradient button, and it possibly will be under a paint bucket. If you don't see your gradient, you can also maybe try to locate it and find the eraser because it's right below the eraser. We're going to click on our Gradient tool. Next, I'm going to click on my foreground color, and I want to change this to a bright orange, so I'm going to double click on here, and the key commands for orange, R is 247, RG is 148, and RB is going to be 29. We get those numbers and we press OK. Our background color should still be white. We're going to look at our options bar. At the top of your options, we have several different ways we can create a gradient. We want to click on the first option, which is default. That's linear. It means that the gradient is going to follow a line. Now I'm going to click inside my color picker. I'll show you guys how I did that once again. You're going to click inside here in your colors. It says click to edit gradient. We click here. We want to choose the second option, which is actually foreground to transparent. Okay. If I do foreground to transparent, you're going to see that the orange goes from orange and it completely fades out to something that we would see would be clear. So we would see whatever is underneath the Hawaii, like the flower or the pineapple. In this case, I want to do foreground to background so that it goes from orange to white. Those are the two gradients that you use most often. I'm going to press OK. With my selection still active, I'm going to drag the gradient tool from the bottom to the top of the letters. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the W to the top of the W. When you let go, you'll see that the orange is at the bottom of the letters, white is at the top. Okay, we are done with this layer, so we want to deselect it. Remember that you can go up and choose select and deselect, or we can do our keyboard command that I want you guys to use, which is Control D. We deselected it, and Hawaii looks okay, but we need to make some layer style enhancements. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is look at our layer styles. I like these because they're non-destructive. That means we can add, change them, but it's really not changing the way that the text appears. So what we want to do is we're going to first select the Island Paradise layer, and we're going to go down to our FX button. Remember that you can also go to your layer menu and choose layer styles. But from here, we're going to choose drop shadow. It's the last one in the list. And when we do drop shadow, we are going to leave the settings. Oh wait, we're going to change the settings. We want to make sure that global light is selected. Our blending mode is multiply. Our opacity is 75%. The angle is going to be 78 degrees. Distance, 5 pixels. Spread is going to be 30%. And the size is going to be 10. Okay. Everything else should stay the same. I'll leave the screen up for a second so you can get the settings to match yours. Okay, once we have our settings selected, we're going to press OK, and you'll notice that in my layer styles, they're nested underneath the layer option. I can turn off the visibility to a layer style the same way I turn off a visibility of a layer. I can also expand and collapse. If I don't want to see what all my effects are, but I want to leave them there, I simply click on the arrow next to the FX. I know that they're there, but I don't have to look at them. Okay, we want to copy our effects to the layer for Hawaii. So rather than having to go down here and click on Hawaii and FX, we're going to hold down our Alt key. I'm going to put my mouse on top of the FX that's for the Island Paradise. As I'm holding down Alt, you'll notice as I'm dragging, the FX follows my cursor. So it's copying the effect. When I release the mouse on Hawaii, now you see that it also has a drop shadow. Okay, now we want to select our Hawaii layer, and we want to add a few more enhancements to the word Hawaii just to make it stand out. So we're going to go down to our FX button again, and this time we're going to choose stroke. Now if you remember in the first part of the lesson when we made the frame around the picture, the stroke is simply the outline. We want to choose a 4-pixel stroke. We want to choose outside, normal, opacity is going to be 100%, and we want to select the same green color that we selected before. Now I'm going to click on my color picker. I could go back and try to type in those numbers again, but if I move my cursor over here to the green letter and I click, it will sample the color from the word island, and now you'll see the numbers were exactly the same as what we put in before. We're going to press OK and press OK again. Next we're going to select our flower layer, and we're going to choose a drop shadow for it. So we're going to go down to our FX, choose drop shadow. This time we want our blending mode will stay at multiply. Our opacity is going to lower to 60%. Our distance will be 13. Your spread will be 9. Our size will be 5. We want to make sure that global light is still selected, and we press OK. And you'll notice the top of the screen on your flower, you'll see a nice shadow, so it looks like the objects are stacked on top of each other. Okay. Now with the layer style box, we can go in and make some adjustments to the flower. I'm going to double click on the word effects. It opens the box back up. Now over here on the left I can add more layer styles. I'm going to click the check mark by satin, and I'm going to make sure that I highlight it by clicking on the word. Okay, so with the layer style box open, we've chose satin on the left. We want to make sure that invert is selected right there. Under our color, next to our blend mode, we're going to double click on that. We're going to change our color to kind of a fuchsia pink color. Your R will be 236, your G will be 0, and your blue is 140. Press OK. Our opacity is going to be 20%. Our distance is going to be 22 pixels. The angle should be 19. The size should be 14. Press OK. And now there's a satin overlay on top of your flower. Next we're going to talk about adjustment layers. Adjustment layers can be added to an image to apply color or fix the tone of the image without permanently changing the pixels in the image. Okay, that's called non-destructive because there's no permanent change. It would be the equivalent of wearing a prescription sunglasses. You can take them off or on. It changes the appearance of your face. We're going to select our flower 2 layer. Okay, so with non-destructive editing, we want to make some adjustments to our flower 2. So you're going to scroll in your layers panel till you find flower 2. In flower 2, we're going to go up and we want to see our adjustments panel. Okay, I'm going to move my adjustment panel over here into my screen so you can see it. If you don't see your adjustment panel when you're looking in your lineup over here, remember that you can go to Window and you can choose Adjustments to make it show up. Okay, the icons for the adjustments don't always make a lot of sense, but if you hover your mouse over them, it will tell you what is going on with each adjustment. Remember that these are creating separate layers. So we're going to find the one that's on the second row. It's called Hue and Saturation Adjustment Layer. Okay, so I click right here. Now if you're not comfortable finding the icon to do your adjustment layers, you can also go up to your layer menu, choose New Adjustment, and Hue and Saturation from there. Okay, in my properties over here for hue and saturation, I want to change the hue to 43. That just tells us that it's going to be more of a blue color. Then I'm going to change my saturation to 19. If it's desaturated, it takes out the color. If it's saturated, it adds more color in. And then I'm going to leave my lightness at 0. Do it over again. We just adjusted the brightness or the color intensity by changing the saturation up, and by moving the hue over to the blue, it made the blue colors a little bit more intense. I'm going to press the eyeball that's down at the bottom of the panel. I can see the before and I can see the after. You'll notice that by doing the changes, it also affected the flower, the pineapple copy, the pineapple, and the clouds in the background layer. But in this particular case, I only wanted to change flower 2. So what we're going to do is I can click on the little arrows to close this down. You guys don't have to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my layers panel. You'll notice that it made a new layer for the hue and saturation because it's a non-destructive editing. I can turn the eyeball off of it over here and treat it just like its own layer. But what I want to do is I want to make it apply only to the flower 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click inside my hue and saturation layer, and I'm going to choose create clipping mask. Okay, when I press that, you're going to see that a small arrow goes down and points to the flower, and that layer is indented in. Now if I take the eyeball, turn off and on, I notice that the only thing that changes is that flower 2. Okay, layer effects are automatically updated when you make changes to a layer. You can edit the text and watch how the layer effects how the layer effect tracks the change. Okay, so first what we're going to do is in our layers panel, I'm going to pull my layers panel out so you guys can see it a little bit easier. In my layers panel, I'm going to look at the very top of the layer, right above my blending mode where it says normal. I want to choose kind, which is above that, and I want to choose one of my selections. We chose kind because we're looking for what kind of layer it is. The next thing I want to do is over here in my options, I want to click on the T for text. I'm filtering it for the type layers or text layers. If you were working with a document that had a bunch of layers, this would be really helpful because if you wanted to only adjust the text layers really quickly and you didn't want to see all the other pictures, we could filter it for just the text layers or the type. When you think of the filtering for the different types of layers, think of it as just like a selection tool that you might use in another program. It searches for certain features, and right now we've got our Island Paradise layer selected. Okay, in my Tools panel, I'm going to double click on my Island Paradise, and in my Tools panel up here, I'm going to change the font. I want to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to choose 32. And then what I want to do is I want to look at my horizontal type tool. So it's selected. I'm still in horizontal type. And I'm going to put a space in between island and I'm going to type of. So now it's the Island of Paradise. I noticed that when I added the of, my text now no longer lines up with Hawaii. So in this particular instance, if I don't like the way it goes, adjusting the tracking would probably make my letters too close. So we're going to backspace of. Yes, I just had you do something and then undo it. But now we decide that the text looks a little bit more balanced. So now what we want to do is you're going to look at the filtering off and on button. It's up here at the very top of your layers panel, right below your layers menu or your panel menu, and you can toggle that off. So if I want to turn the filter off, I push it down. If the filter is on, it's red and it's pushed up. This gives us the ability to see all of the layers versus just the text layer only. Now, just in case our computer was to crash or the power was to turn off or something happened, we want to do a Control S to save our document one more time. Okay, now we're going to select the postage layer. Use your Move tool and drag to the middle right of the image. I click on my postage layer and I'm going to drag it down right so I can see it over the red flower, and it goes on top of the beach. Now let's click on the Island Paradise layer. So we select the Island Paradise layer, and then I'm going to go down and click on the Create a New Layer button. It's at the bottom of your Layers panel. We click on that, and now we see that a new layer has formed on the very top. We want to do a Control A. That selects all. Now we want to do Select, Modify, Border. We're going to change the width of the border to 10 pixels, and we're going to press OK. What that did is it brought your border in by 10 pixels from the edge of the screen. Now what we're going to do is we're going to change our foreground color to white. And to change your foreground color to white quickly, if you look above your color picker, right here you see a little bended arrow. If I click on that, it will switch from my foreground to background colors quickly, and your background color was already white, so that's pretty easy. After you change your foreground color to white, our next step is to fill it in. So we're going to choose Edit, Fill. It's important that you make the next changes. Where it says Use, we don't want to change Content Aware. We want to select the foreground color. And then I'm going to press OK. Okay. What it does is it's going to put a white border around the edge of your layer. We like what we have, so we're going to Control D to deselect, and now you can probably see the border a little bit easier. I want to rename layer 1, and I'm going to call it Border so that it describes what we are working with. From here we want to Control S. So we save our work in our original file. We've talked about when we save something as a PSD, we have multiple layers. If we save it as a JPEG, it flattens it down to one layer. Right now that probably doesn't mean a lot to you because we're just starting out in graphics, but look down in the lower left-hand corner of your work area. It says Document, and it probably says something like 2.29 megs versus 37.4 megs. Everybody see that? The 2.29 represents what the file size would be if we flatten it. The 37.4 megs shows what size the document will be if we don't flatten it. One way that I tell students to do to make a duplicate layer is just to go to File, Save As, and then rename it something different. When we name it as a JPEG, it's automatically going to flatten down. Adobe also wants you to know how to create a duplicate of this document. So we're going to go to Image, and a little bit farther than halfway down you choose Duplicate. It asks you what you want to call it. We're going to leave it as your name, Hawaii. And this time I'm just going to put .jpeg, .jpg. I know that this is going to be flattened down to 1 whenever I save it as a JPEG. So I'm just going to go ahead and name it that so that it makes it easier for me later. I'm going to press OK. And now I'm going to flatten it. So I'm going to go to Layer. And I'm going to go down to Flatten Image. It's down almost to the very bottom, next to the last. Now my image is flat. Remember, because we created a duplicate image, I have two images open. Here's my original, and here's the one that's flat. You notice that when you look at the flat document, now both measurements at the lower left corner are both the same, 2.29. Okay, now we're going to do Control-Shift-S to save this one. We want to put it in our network folder, not your teacher's network folder. And we will need to remember to save this one as a JPEG. So under our format, we choose JPEG. And we make sure that Hawaii, your name Hawaii.jpg is still there. We're going to press save. When we get our JPEG saving options up, we always want to choose 12 for our quality on compression, and we make sure it's a large file. We press OK, and now we have a PSD and a JPEG of our document. The last thing that you want to do is select your text. I want you to choose a font that you think would look nice with your postcard. You're going to type your first and last name and save your JPEG again. Now you're done.